Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 125, where I'll be talking to Kimberly Spencer, an award-winning high-performance coach and trainer, Amazon bestseller, author, TEDx speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com, and the CEO of Communication Queens, helping visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out purposefully, and create a body, business, and life that rules. From her entrepreneurial beginning at 5, selling bags of glitter to the neighbors, to becoming an award-winning screenwriter, certified Pilates instructor, Miss Congeniality, and having a successful exit as a president of an e-commerce company, Kimberly is proof that it is better to make your own mold than to conform to someone else's. With 2x multiple award nominated top podcasts for her business, Crown Yourself and Communication Queen, Kimberly is elevating the conversation for visionary leaders to get their voices heard. A warrior of human infinite possibilities and an unsinkable optimism, this boy mom of 2 is a guest of a revolutionizing mindset from fear to faith so that you stand in your power. Her work has been featured on Netflix, the CW, ESPN, Chicken Soup for the Soul, NPR, Thrive Global, CNBC, and Forbes. I trust that you will garner some nuggets of wisdom from this delightful conversation with Kimberly. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me, Niranjan. Yeah, I am so honored to be here.
You are very welcome. I'm honored to have you as a guest and for us to have some delicious time together and unravel your amazing background, and that didn't come with ease.
No, hard fought. And it's interesting because my new, you know, they say that what got you here won't get you there. My new unraveling is really with this word hard and this concept of things being hard or having to be hard in order to achieve what it is that you desire.
Yes.
So far, the experiment is going well. But I definitely have to say it's about 30 years of reprogramming of this concept of hard.
Yes.
And but it's transformational when you do it.
When it happens, exactly. It is. But that's a journey in itself of being open to receiving it and looking at it and welcoming it.
Yeah. I mean, because the welcoming of the challenges, which can be perceived as hard, or they can just be perceived as a challenge. And I've started to perceive any sort of challenge that comes my way as an initiation into that which I desire. And that perspective shift alone is a game changer, because I physically embodied that when I gave birth to my boys. And that experience of giving birth, especially with my first son, because it was 24 hours of natural labor, the first 16 were really challenging. And my son it was not budging, and nothing was really happening. And it wasn't until I surrendered and I had the breakthrough with my body that he's working, this little body is working hard for the first time.
Yeah.
for the first time to come into this world. And I've done this for like 30 years. I was 30 at the time. And so, what if I cheered on those challenges?
Mm.
What if I championed him? And I switched the mindset from it being about me and like how hard it was for me
Right.
to I'm going to champion this little guy who's doing hard for the first time.
Mm.
And I'm going to champion him on,
Mm.
change the game, sped things up miraculously.
I bet. I bet. Not only from that point, but moving forward too.
hmm Yeah, moving forward, I mean, that was that same mindset took me into scaling my coaching company, into moving to Australia and being able to do that with the faith that I could be the sole breadwinner for my family because we were there during COVID and my husband's industry entirely shut down.
Right.
And that ended up being a really exciting transformation for us because my husband got to fulfill a lifelong dream. He got to go to chef
Mm.
school, and I then became pregnant with our second child, and I got to eat his homework, which I think was a very smart move. And I mean, when your husband brings home a tub of chocolate ganache and you're pregnant, it's like a win at life.
Oh my goodness. Wow. You definitely hit a jackpot or something there, that's for sure. Well done. Well done. Nice.
Thank you. But
Mm.
that transformation and that perspective shift of really looking at every challenge, because from then on, it was like there was the initiation of scaling. There was the initiation of losing my father, losing three other family members and two family friends within 1 year, the initiation of becoming a new mother again,
Mhm.
um, and having that second baby and having it unassisted because my just decided to come so fast. My midwife wasn't even there. And
Yeah,
then the moves beyond that to continue growing our business. We still grew 300% that year. We still grew 150% the next year to starting our second business because like any normal person, when you have a second baby, you obviously start a second business.
of course.
And of course, I mean, Gemini's in my 10th house, so it very much makes sense for me to
Oh,
always have two. But that being able to have that playfulness and understanding and then championing your challenges rather than having them be seen and perceived with this mindset of hard. In fact,
mhm.
I just did the 75 hard program.
Oh,
And yeah, did that even when I found out I was pregnant, still continued on with it, still
wow.
championed it, but I never called it hard. I never called it 75 hard. I
Yeah,
never even told my family I was doing it because I'd tried it before. And because it was hard, I stopped and I made up all these stories in my mind
sure.
about hard versus just called it my program. And I
Yeah.
just embodied it and I had the principles and I had the structure. I honored the discipline and then completed it. And it made it so that the hard wasn't exhaustingly hard because of the mindset of it being hard. I just made it so that it was just what is.
Mm-hmm. 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 With that, not been an easy ride to get to where you are, and been faced with lots of challenges in life, but also lots of successes and lots of growth. I mean, five from the point of each decade brings about opportunities. I see it. That's how I see it in life. Each decade, we can unravel and unwrap some core lessons and some core challenges that have shown up for us. And with the birth of your two children and moving different countries and doing all of these things that you do so boldly, from what
Yeah.
I'm witnessing, what I'm seeing with a huge print of a tiger behind you. I don't know if that doesn't say boldness, I don't know what does. Um, what do you believe about yourself, and do you feel it's defined who Kimberly is today?
First of all, I love the word bold. It's one of my favorite words, along with courage. And that is who I aspire to define myself. That's a characteristic and a quality
Mhm.
that I aspire to continue leaning into. And there have been times like last year, for example, when I was not so courageous, when I wasn't taking as big bold moves and I was settling. Quite frankly, I was in a trauma response now, looking back.
Right.
But that experience of being able to, because boldness comes when you feel safe.
Yeah.
And those those big moments of boldness, they had to come from a place of certainty. Not just faith, but like pure certainty that I know I'm going to catch myself, or in like the example of moving to Australia in the midst of a pandemic, as it's like literally breaking out around us while we're over there on vacation and choosing to stay. Like those boldness moves came from such a place of certainty and intuition. And there comes that place of trust. I was not always courageous. I definitely had my years, and I would say my younger decades were filled with a lot of fear.
Hmm.
They were filled with, my boldness was from a place of trying to prove myself,
Right.
of having to have the achievements be compensation
Yep.
versus the boldness is a requirement of stepping into my highest potential.
Right.
And that from that place of service to a higher purpose versus service to please and prove or disprove the narratives that other people had about me. And that's a different type of boldness when you flip the value system from it being directed at other people's validation
Hmm.
to being directed at you're only in like what is an alignment for my highest and best evolution that's thus going to support the highest evolution of those around me and those that I love.
Right. Right. And that's a challenging space to be in
Mm-hmm.
because we have these things and people and places in life that say, hey, no, you need to be here. And you
Mm-hmm.
need to be living in this little box. And you need to be only playing in this small sandbox of a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And these people, somehow we have this connection with called family and community, and those who are intrinsically connected to us from many, many different levels and spaces. What was that navigation like for you?
I mean, for me, it started with my primary caregivers, which was my father and my mother. And
Mm,
because growing up with my father, who was an addict for majority of my life, he was an addict for alcohol was the worst. He could get addicted to anything like that. That man got addicted to apples. Like he could literally get addicted to anything. But that that scenario put me in the drama triangle of being the hero or being the villain,
mhm,
like,
mhm,
or being the victim of my own hand, which was for me, like that manifested in a 10-year battle with bulimia when I was younger.
mm,
And that breakthrough, I remember the moment that I realized that I had moved out of my childhood home. I had started freelancing. It was my first business as a Pilates instructor. Within 1 year, I'd become the highest paid, most fully booked instructor at the studio. I was freelancing it, and I was like, I think I'm on to something. I think I'm pretty like, I think I'm gifted. I think that this is a gift. And I looked at, well, what is it? And one of the things that I recognized that I never led with like, look at me and how perfect I am. Like I led with, let me tell you the stuff. And here's a process that I found that really served. And for me, that process at the time was Pilates. Little did I know I was retraining my nervous system to undo the years of trauma wiring that I'd had of being in a sympathetic hyper fight, flight, freeze state for
mhm,
years.
mhm,
And that Pilates is one of the forms of exercise that trains your parasympathetic nervous system. So I was getting my nervous system regulated through
mhm,
that time. Combine that with shifting my environment. And it was an interesting dichotomy with my parents because while there was the challenges of addiction and at sometimes, especially in my early childhood abuse, there also was the dichotomy that like my parents were my biggest cheerleaders. Like they
sure.
always believed in me at the same time. So it was this weird paradigm that I was living in. And it caused me to be a victim for years where I thought that I was broken, damaged, and a victim, and that I would never be enough. And it was when I moved out and I was living on my own and I was in this healing process of bulimia. And I was really getting, because I was living alone, which I highly recommend to any human, like at least
Absolutely.
live alone for like a year of your life and you will learn
Yes,
so much about yourself.
absolutely.
And that time I started to become really aware of my thoughts. And it was then that I realized it was never my father shoving my finger down my throat for 10 years. It was me. I had to take personal responsibility for that.
Right.
I sure we could have all the reasons as to why I was the way that I was and all the limitations and all that. But ultimately, for 10 years, I had made the choice to take the action that was self-destructive to my body, which was
Hmm.
binging and purging.
Hmm.
And it was from that place of personal responsibility that my world started to change. Because once I started to take responsibility for my healing, then I was no longer blaming my father and or my mom. Once I started to take responsibility, I also started to show up and flip that what in the drama triangle, there's the villain, the victim, and the hero. And I
Hmm.
started to shift from the victim into being the creator of my circumstances, which thus meant I had boundaries with my family,
Right.
which meant I wasn't going to swoop in and rescue them.
Right.
And so come I would say 2016 was when I staged my father's intervention. And then that was right after the time I got married in 2014 to my husband. And we broke off ties after that intervention with my family. And I said, you're going to do healing. I printed out all the resources for all the rehabs, all the psychologists, all the things. And I did everything that I could. And I said, this is your responsibility now. I have done the work for you.
Hmm.
If you don't take it and run with it, then that's on you, and we can no longer have a relationship.
Hmm.
And I think one of my favorite testimonies for possibility is that after that intervention, my father stayed sober off of alcohol for until he passed in
Hmm.
2021.
Hmm.
And that allowed me to have a relationship with him and allowed me to see that great sober dad that I had occasionally seen glimpses of growing up, who I just loved and adored. It
Hmm.
also allowed my son to get to meet him
Hmm.
and my son to get to know that great sober dad so he doesn't have any recollection of the
Right.
monsters that I lived with.
Right.
And that's so powerful when you think of the forgiveness journey that comes with that. And for me, there was a lot to forgive. But that set the foundation for me to take bigger acts of courage,
Hmm.
for me to lean in. Now I've been an entrepreneur forever, since I was like 5. I was selling bags of glitter water at 5. So I'm naturally prone to being more risk
Right.
taking.
Yeah.
However, it's calculated and it is something that I take a risk when I feel fully like I can back myself in that choice.
Sure.
And so to other people, it may seem risky. To me, I'm like, no, I need to make that choice. And this is something that we need to lean into.
Hmm.
Normally, when it comes from that place of intuition, not ego, it works out.
Right. Exactly. Through your journey and through your own personal experiences, but also the clients that you serve and the individuals that you serve, especially in the communication space of putting their voices out there, putting their narrative and putting their heart and passion out there in what they
Mhm.
do. Maybe I've answered the question, but hopefully not. What do you feel is your calling at this juncture of your life? Because you've done
I
a
feel
lot of
like my
things.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things. And between Pilates to screenwriting to being president of an e-commerce company to, our coaching company, Crown Yourself, to Communication Queens, where we're getting other
Yeah.
people's stories out, the through line has always been stories.
Mm.
In screenwriting, I know for a fact that the movie that I co-wrote, Bro, with starring Danny Trejo, which is a niche, tiny, like motocross movie. It's a niche motocross movie that most people don't know unless you're in the world of freestyle motocross. How I wrote that, I researched it. But the power of the story, there's only 7 narratives that humans
Right.
understand.
That's
Like
right.
there's only 7.
Yeah.
And the story ultimately was a story of belonging. We've all had those moments, whether it was in high school or in college or, dating, where we've wanted to belong. And maybe in some ways, we contorted ourselves into who we thought we should be in order to be accepted, only to find that that just made us very deeply unfulfilled and was off and on the wrong path for us.
Mhm.
And that was the story of Bro. And the same was true when I was rewriting people's stories about what was possible for their bodies. Like
Right.
when I was teaching people Pilates, I would get pregnant women and people post-surgery coming in, and I would show them this process that would allow them to see, oh my gosh, so much more is possible for my body. I
That's
don't
right.
have to live by this programming that like I'm going to have a tummy for forever because I had a baby, or I don't have to live by the programming that I'm going to be in pain for forever because I had surgery. Like
Mhm.
those stories, so often the stories that we tell ourselves are not actually true. I
Of
mean, I
course.
certainly have had my fair share of stories that are completely not true.
Yeah.
They're just, automatic negative
Yeah.
thoughts,
Yeah.
and they get processed into those stories. The same was true with our e-commerce company. We were rewriting people's stories about what was possible for their back pain with
Mm.
our back stretching chair. Like same with
Right.
coaching. And then now we're just putting out people's stories. And I had no idea when I started our agency, Communication Queens, that it would actually be a personal development tool for some
Mm.
of our clients, where
Absolutely.
suddenly, like one of the best compliments I got was from one of our clients, Ashley Chamberlain, who said that now she reads her bio before she goes on podcasts
Mm.
and to kind of remind herself about like how badass she is.
Yes.
And I was blown away. And she's through the process of going on other people's shows and sharing her story and sharing
Mhm.
how she's built this amazing bookkeeping business. Through that process, she has been able to receive compliments.
Nice.
And I think back to like years and years and years ago, because it's been a few identities ago. But I remembered, I was like, oh yes, when I was in that place struggling with bulimia, I too struggled with receiving compliments. I actually think it's a
Mhm.
really big one that many
Mhm.
women have struggled with, of just being
Absolutely.
able to receive a compliment instead of deflecting it, instead of saying,
Yes.
oh well, I got this dress half off, or oh,
Right.
I'll look so much better when I lose, 10 more pounds, or
Right.
whatever it is. Like we're so used to deflecting these comments about ourselves, and being able to receive is such a powerful energy
It
to be
is.
in.
Absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
fact that I never thought that going on podcasts would provide people with that opportunity, but I'm not surprised now in hindsight, looking back and being able to say,
Absolutely.
okay, yes, now I completely see how it, because when you share your story, you start to also hear the parts of your story that you're like, yeah, I don't feel I need to tell that anymore. And I mean,
Hmm.
yes, sometimes for context, you may need to share or
Sure.
explain certain aspects of it,
Sure.
but there may be certain pieces where it's complete for you.
Yep.
And thus, it no longer is playing that main supporting role in your life as as a supporting narrative.
Yep.
It's just a piece of the story.
Yep.
And you'll find those pieces that get healed because shame loves secrets. And so the more you bring those stories to light, the more those stories suddenly no longer have power over you.
Hmm. Hmm. What do you feel are some of the attributes that put you and potentially others in their space to align them with their purpose?
So putting people in the space to align them with their purpose.
What are the attributes that do that?
Mm, definitely courage.
Hmm.
Courage 100%. Um, clarity, like having clarity and discernment
Right.
as to what is yours and what was a dream that somebody else gave you that they said you should have, but you've just held on to it for so long you don't realize that that's not
Yeah.
even yours.
Yeah.
That was me with acting. Um, Years and years ago, because I started teaching Pilates to support myself in my career in entertainment, and it was with acting, and I wanted to be the female Clint Eastwood when I was 17.
Mm.
And I looked at that, and for me, acting really was a space of gaining understanding and understanding my emotions and how to
Yes.
process feeling. It
Yes.
was not necessarily about being the performer. There's part of that that I do love. Obviously, I'm going out and being the performer in my own way, doing
Sure.
conferences, speaking on shows and things like that. But it's very different. No longer was there the need to have the validation from the audience.
Mm.
No
Mm-hmm.
longer was
Mm-hmm.
there the need for that, the accolades, and no longer was there the need for the dream. And I think when you're able to fully surrender a dream and you trust, like, if it's for me, it's going to come back to me.
Yes.
And you allow yourself to pivot and dance along the way, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
find that if it is for you, it's going to come back into your life. Like I had writing come back into my life, and it's been amazing getting, the process of getting my book out into the world with Make Every Podcast Want You. But that piece of being able to have that dance and allow for the subtle pivots. I mean, when I realized when I had the dream fulfilled of getting a movie produced, first feature film, big screen, premiere, Danny Trejo starred in it. And I'm at the premiere and I'm feeling 90% fulfilled, not 100%.
Mm.
Like, what is up? Like, this is like lifelong dream at 24 years
Big.
old, like
Yeah.
achieved. And I got curious and I realized, oh, I don't just want to be a screenwriter. I want to be the director and the producer. And that's what I found in entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I get to be the director, the producer. The screenwriter just writes the blueprint of the story. The the actors, the director, the producer, everyone else kind of fills it in.
Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of entrepreneurship is that when you can build that. And so now, in essence, as the CEO of my company, like I get to be that executive producer and have my directors moving and get to talk about the vision and
Right.
get to, you know, execute the vision of this transformational experience through my companies. It just was not in the same form.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's allowing yourself to be curious is another piece and
Yeah.
another attribute. So clarity,
Absolutely.
curiosity, and
Yeah.
courage, because curiosity is going to lead you into
Yeah.
places that you never expected, but that may
Mm-hmm.
actually feel more fulfilling when you achieve them.
Absolutely. It's an interesting one, and even all those coupled together, um, I think are really interesting attributes. Having had many conversations with individuals and been on my own journey too, in being in the space of recognizing that these attributes are primarily driven by entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
You may see them in C-suite, depending on how much power and influence they actually have. However, I've seen them more boldly and more broadly embodied with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people who are more in charge of the direction and the driver of their own life.
Hmm.
Um, Not ridiculing and not dismissing those who choose to live a corporate life and have passion, desire to do so. But I find that it sits in a different place for entrepreneurs, and that driving factor of all of these really propel us collectively in a whole different space, which I think is
Hmm.
beautiful to witness and see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I personally don't believe like politicians are going to change the world. I actually think entrepreneurs will because of these driving attributes of
Yeah,
curiosity and clarity and courage and
yeah.
being able to boldly innovate and move forward and revolutionize, disrupt the
Hmm.
norm. I
Hmm.
think that that's entrepreneurs are just kind of built differently.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's why they don't necessarily fit into the box. It was funny. I was having a conversation with my 7-year-old, and he was saying, Mommy, what's college? because we homeschool him.
Mm.
And I said, oh, well, college is, an institution where you go and it's higher learning and he wants to be a rocket scientist. I said, so if you're going to want to be a rocket scientist, you're going to probably have to go to college
Yes,
and get a degree because they want to trust you that you can build a rocket ship safely.
that's
He's
right.
like, I don't want to do that. I was like, okay. I
Yeah.
said, or you could be like Elon Musk and hire the scientists and the people who've gone to college with the PhDs and participate in the evolution by holding the vision of the company for what you want to build. He goes,
Hmm.
I like that. And
There
I
you
was like,
go.
okay, all right, we found your path.
That's right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. And it's so interesting to see that probably in the little beings, how their natural gravitation is to be more open, to be more free, to be more um, less structured, less constricted,
Yeah.
which to a certain degree, yes, I grant it that we need that in our world and we need that in society for sure. But when it's steered in the right way of this freedom and these big wings that are going to open to an infinite amount of creativity and imagination, that is such a blessing for these kids
Yeah.
that
Yeah. It's
you're
like that
being
NASA
blessed
study.
about. Mhm. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. That NASA study that studied creativity. I think it was done in the 60s. And it studied children at the age of 5. And basically it registered them as like creative geniuses. Like they were
Hmm.
like off the charts. And they followed them throughout their growth. And by
Yeah.
the time that they had like graduated high school, they were at like 5% creativity. Is for like creative
Mm,
genius had gone down
that's
significantly
right. Yeah, I could believe that.
with with the structure. So I think that I agree with you. There is a place for structure. Like we do need to have structure and order in society. And I think the evolution of education that we'll see in the near future will be how do we give our kids the structure that individually they need so that they know how they learn best. They learn how to be strong citizens as well. They understand how they can process a problem and also can communicate how they process a problem to others so that
Right.
they can have that versatility of discussion
Yeah.
and open it up. Like I think we have one of the reasons why I love podcasts so much is because of the Socratic dialogue, is
Hmm.
because we
Hmm.
get to engage in deeper conversations.
Hmm.
That's why podcast listeners listen to podcasts.
That's
Like
right.
66% are making medium to high income, 66% have a college degree or higher. It's a highly educated audience
Yes.
typically.
Yeah.
And it's a space where we can have those more educated, insightful dialogues of curiosity, of like,
Right.
oh, I love that point that you have. And then, let me see around this one. I know in our last conversation that we had, like you pointed out some really interesting points. And I said, oh, I'd never thought about it that way. And it
Mm-hmm.
allows for that back and forth, but it only comes with curiosity.
That's
I think
right.
the problem is sometimes children are taught judgment at a very, very early age of
Absolutely.
judging this is a good idea, this is a bad idea.
Right.
And at least in my family, we don't label it as that.
Hmm.
We look at, did this choice get you the results that you've wanted, or did
Hmm.
this choice get you put into consequences that you'd prefer not to have, like a timeout
Hmm.
or losing
Hmm.
losing an iPad or losing screen time or something.
Screen time now.
Being able to look at those consequences and look objectively of like, did these choices move you forward toward what you want, or did these choices, keep you stuck?
No. Yeah.
Because it always
Yeah.
comes down to choice.
Always does. But I also see perhaps a shift in how children are being raised and the next phase of these teenagers and adults that are coming into the world and how that progression is taking place from when I was a teenager or a
Hmm.
young adult, not that I'm that old of an adult, but it's been in that place of seeing people shift and seeing our culture and our environment change along with that. Um,
Hmm.
mm, how people are choosing to live, the choices that they are making. Yes, we've gone through the narrative of your dollar counts and you can have more power with that, but more on the space of balancing out the quality of life that I want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to see what is the life I desire to create. I see twofold. I see it almost like a bifurcation of society where there's one part of society that's kind of accepting what's been given,
Yeah,
and they just are
surrender
basically a
to it.
slave to their screen addiction, which is terribly sad. And
Yep,
then I also see those who are consciously saying, wait, this is not healthy. This is not good. This is causing detriment to our mental health, our
right.
physical health. I'm choosing completely opposite and doing something so different. And I think that we're going to come in the next decade or so, we're going to see some very interesting sociological experiments that have been playing out for the past decade play
Yeah,
out in full. And we're going to see, were we right in our hypotheses or were we
right,
wrong?
right.
And how can we course correct to make sure that, like, my kids' generation, the younger, is the ones who are 5, 6, 7 years old right now, that they're not going to suffer the same consequences.
Hmm.
Um, and that we have certain boundaries in place. And how can we do that? I
Yeah.
think in that way, the pandemic was super eye-opening for many people. I think one of the changes that I've seen personally as a coach is no longer are people boxed in. Either people are more boxed in or they're like, they blew up the boxes.
The contrast
Yeah.
is high. Mhm.
Yeah. The contrast is very high. And by blew up the boxes, what I mean is, like, there is no longer this perception of, like, this is my professional box, this is my career box, and this is my family box.
Right.
It it bled everything together.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that created some uh tumultuous circumstances for some families. That created some amazing circumstances for others. It really allowed people to have a space to assess, do I even like my family? Do I even like the people that I've chosen to spend time with? Like, do I enjoy my career? Am I finding fulfillment? Am I
Yes.
finding purpose in what I'm doing? And I
Yeah.
think, especially for those who experienced a trauma response in the past few years,
Hmm.
that can the first and foremost thing to do is make sure your nervous system is regulated,
Hmm.
first and foremost, because decisions made from a place of fight, flight, freeze are never going to be the best decision. They're always coming from a place of fear.
Right. But even at that, regulating your nervous system is is like saying, I'm going to win the lottery tomorrow
Yeah.
for many people. It's
Mm-hmm.
unfathomable because they've been in that place for so long. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the unfortunate piece that people maybe skim over or skim around or going, of course I'm regulated. I'm good. There's nothing wrong with me. Look, I'm fully functioning and I handle
Yeah.
stress very well. Okay, really? Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So I think there are lots of basics that
Mm-hmm.
we can take for granted to a certain degree, but also have been so sensationalized over the last, especially the last 4 or 5 years. It's
Mm-hmm.
lost its potency.
Mm-hmm. I've
So
seen that with marketing messaging too.
yeah.
And I mean, because you can hear it 50 bajillion different ways of, oh, go regulate your nervous system. Well, how? And, like, do what?
Yeah.
For me, I always say, start very basic. What are your sleep habits? What are
Mhm.
your movement habits? And it's not high stress, go to the gym, really hit it hard. It's like, move in a way that's allowing your body to access a parasympathetic state
Absolutely.
just on a regular basis. Those two basics of make sure you're getting your sleep and make sure you're moving your body in a way that's allowing your body to, so, and that's long walks, that's Pilates, that's yoga, Qigong. That,
Mhm.
though, it's not this high intensity, like, workouts sort of mentality,
Yeah,
because that spikes your cortisol like crazy.
it
And so if you're
does.
already in that fight, flight, freeze, that's just
It's going to amplify
that can
it.
agitate you even more.
That's
So
right.
allowing yourself to have the space for a long walk,
Yeah.
have the space, and those basic principles is where I always suggest starting, and give yourself 6 months. Like,
Hmm.
Give yourself time
That's right.
because it took time to get into that heightened freeze
Yeah.
sympathetic state.
Yeah.
So give yourself time. Your body has to get used to coming back
All
down
right.
and having the versatility.
That's right.
So as much as the nervous system regulate, it's not doing 50 things at once. And I never recommend that to any of my clients. I'm like, what is one thing
Mm-hmm.
or two
Mm-hmm.
tops?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I always start with are you taking your meds? Meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep.
Right.
Those four, you can, if your baseline, the foundation is not at least solid, whether it's a walking meditation. You don't have to like, I used to be the person who's like, I can't meditate. Meditation was not for me. And then I discovered in 2019, I was in a really stressful time in my life. My father had just gotten into the psych ward for suicidal ideation. My mom was running her business on her own. They were dealing with a property that we co-owned with them, and like it
Mm-hmm.
was not going well. And then I also had my business and I had a 2-year-old.
Right.
It was a lot. And so my nervous system was fried. And that was when I was had on my podcast my friend Tirsa Shirai, and she scaled her business from 0 to 30 million. I said, whatever you did, teach me. And she said she meditates and she does this thing called transcendental meditation.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, sign me up. I'll learn this meditation. I never thought I could meditate before. I was always
Right.
the type that was like, sit down for 5 minutes. I'm the highly active
Yes.
brained person. Running in the past was my meditation.
Right.
And I just didn't have the energy for it.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not have the
Mm-hmm.
energy to even go for a
Mm-hmm.
run. But I found TM. And when I found that, I was like, everything made sense. I had a
Mm-hmm.
process. Again, it was just like how I found Pilates. I had a process that I
Right.
could follow and I did it. And to this day, I don't do two a day, but I do one a day. And I definitely
Mm-hmm.
feel it if I don't do my one.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, I missed it because normally I do it in the afternoon and I was driving, coming back from a meeting. And today, but just before this, I was like, I need to do my meditation because I
Yeah.
already am feeling that I missed it yesterday.
Right.
Because but having that process for me, having a clear process, that is a game changer that
Mm-hmm.
I can follow that provides results that I can
Right.
feel in my body. And when I can feel those results in my body, that's when I know I'm on the right path.
Yes. Yes. And that's the add-on to do of regulating the nervous system is being in touch with your body.
Hmm. And especially for those who have had significant trauma, including and especially physical or sexual trauma, both of which I have had,
Sure.
um, those experiences of being in touch and the body
That's
is
right.
not felt for a long time to be a safe space.
Exactly.
And so I completely resonate if anyone has had those experiences, because
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time, my body was not a safe space
Right.
to be in.
Right.
And it took several modalities. It took Pilates for me, which was me being able to take I had the agency to go do that. Like I could
Right.
to go follow that. I also went and did cranial sacral therapy for about 4
Mm-hmm.
years. I
Mm-hmm.
had that done to me. Game changer of a process for being able to just receive and help
Right.
rewire the tissue
Yep.
from storing the trauma, because your subconscious mind runs
That's
your
right.
body. Your subconscious
Yep.
mind remembers everything. That's why if you touch somebody in a way that they don't like to be touched or that triggers them, especially if they've had physical or sexual abuse, like
Yes.
that's something to be very aware of. And
Yeah.
for me, cranial sacral therapy was a huge help for speeding through that process of starting to feel safe within my body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then came somatic breath work, and then
Right.
came, or no, then came transcendental meditation, and then came somatic breath
Somatic
work.
breath work.
But
Right.
it's been almost 20 years of practice to get back in touch with my body. Like, and
Yeah.
each step took years.
Sure.
So I love that you brought to attention that like nervous system regulation doesn't happen just like that. Like you will feel a difference after a session of cranial sacral therapy or a
Sure.
session of Pilates. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel better in my body. that feeling, especially if you're not used to feeling good in your body,
Hmm.
it takes practice, just
It
like
does.
anything else. It takes practice feeling good.
Yeah.
Like that was a big one for me. Like I said in the beginning, like I am rewiring and undoing the programming of hard
Yeah.
because things had to be hard in order for them to be an achievement
That's right.
versus I've now just kind of embraced the fact that I do love a kines uh I'm what is it called? A kinesthete. So
Mm.
I like a good physical challenge, like thus the 24 hours of labor, thus like my desire
Mm.
to run marathons, thus, I'm like, oh, Everest is looking pretty appealing.
Ah,
So, but I like a good physical challenge because
sure.
I love I love now being in relationship with my body to be in that space where I'm like, ooh, can we do this Enneagram 8 challenger dance right here?
Yeah,
Like,
right,
let's
right,
see how I
right.
can push the body and how the body receives. And so we're in this dialogue and conversation
Yeah.
versus it being like, I'm going to force you, you have to lose weight or whatever.
Hmm.
That was how my
Hmm.
thinking was back when I was struggling with bulimia. It's
Right.
no longer, and everything in life is a relationship, whether it's your body or your business or your money or your spouse. Everything is a relationship. And I like to use the practice of personifying it.
Hmm.
Of what does money look like?
Hmm.
And or what does my body look like? And man, when I was struggling with bulimia and I personified that, I was like, ooh, I don't, ooh, that's that is it was a sad little
Right.
girl,
Right.
and who was deeply hurt.
Yes.
And that experience of being able to look at that sad little girl and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I've treated you this
Hmm.
way. Like I had
Hmm.
no idea that you were
Yes.
this image. And that depth of healing is a game changer. And that's what I
It
work with
is.
my clients through is looking at each of the relationships that they have, not just the relationships with their, integrator or their ops manager or their team or their spouses, but what is a relationship that you're having with your business? What is a
Yes.
relationship that you're having with your voice, with getting your story out there? What is the relationship that you have with your body? Are you in
Hmm.
dialogue with it? When she
Hmm.
says you should probably sleep in, or are you like, you're gonna wake up and be disciplined? Or do
Yes.
you
Exactly.
allow for that conversation of like, because I think that there is a balance. There is definitely a balance between discipline and doing the thing and keeping your commitments. And there's also an understanding of listening to your body because sometimes the feelings fluctuate and our senses will like to keep us doing the things that feel really good and
Always.
change never feels good at first.
That's right.
And it's feeling into will this for me the question that I ask myself is will I respect myself more
Hmm.
in 45 minutes if I do this workout?
Hmm.
Or will I respect myself more if I listen to my body right now that's saying I need to take a nap instead
Hmm.
and maybe work out a little later?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's allowing yourself to have that dialogue and that one simple question will be a game changer for any area that you're looking to transform.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And the add-on to that is something that I came across is what is the outcome?
Hmm.
What is the outcome that you are looking to gain? Is it a more productive end of day? Is it a more accomplished end of day? So if that's the case, then go ahead and take the nap
Yeah.
or go ahead and do the workout because it'll give you the fuel to be able to accomplish what you need to do.
Hmm.
So it's we're all talking the same language. The semantics are different, but it's the relationship we have to those words, which is what speaks to all of us.
Hmm.
Many of us do the same work or similar variations of it, but it's going to resonate with different people for different reasons. And it's
Hmm.
our responsibility to do the work, but also support people in what resonates with them. Just like
100%.
you. I
Yeah.
mean, the Pilates piece resonated with you at that moment of juncture of your life. Just like selling the glitter water bags when you was little. that resonated with you at that time of your life.
Hmm.
And now getting on stage, being a TEDx speaker, I mean, we all grow in different phases and in different areas of life from my narrative, from my principles of what I do for different reasons.
Hmm. I had a conversation with a client of mine who was starting her coaching company, and she was getting a little disheartened. And we were looking at her sales and all the things. And she was like, Kim, she's like, why work this hard? Like, you do very similar to what I do. What if I just referred people to you? And I was like, I'll always take a referral, but I will not take it from a disheartened place.
Mm,
Um, and I looked at her and I said, look, you have 30 years in the medical profession that I don't have. You're 30 years older than I am. There will be some people who will not want to work with me because they'll think I'm too young or that
that's
I'm too
right.
inexperienced or all the twos. There will be some people who will see me and like want to work with me because of those reasons. But I said, but you,
Mhm.
because you have the 30-year background, you have a language that I don't have access to in the medical world. I
Yeah,
said, you have degrees that I don't have access to, that I haven't achieved.
right.
You have 30 years of life experience as well. And I was like, would you deprive the person who wants to work with you their own breakthroughs?
Mhm.
Because they're not going to be a fit for me
Mhm.
as much like they're going to be a fit for you.
Yeah,
And you call in who is that right fit.
that's right.
And from that, she started to get clients, which I was super
Beautiful,
stoked about. But she,
beautiful.
like, it came from just the belief system of don't deny somebody your else their breakthrough because you decided not to show up in your
That's right.
gifts.
That's right. Yeah.
Like nobody is going to do exactly like when I started my podcast guesting agency, there's like at least seven top podcast guesting agencies who've been in the business for years, far
Hmm.
longer than I have. There have been there's like a new podcast guesting agency popping up every day with
Yeah,
a new coach or VA starting one because they're seeing the benefit and the
that's
ease of
right.
it. But when I looked at like what really made our agency different, I said, well, we're focusing on not just getting you booked on whatever podcast just because it's an easy fit for us and you just don't have the time to do it. We're getting you booked on either on the top 5% of podcasts. We're getting you booked on podcasts that are a match for your avatar, not
Mhm.
just podcasts that are listened to by whomever, but
Mhm.
podcasts that you actually can generate business from
Right.
and develop relationships from.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one of our clients go on David Meltzer's podcast, and David Meltzer invited him to come speak at his mastermind. And
Mm.
like the business that gets generated from that
Yes,
is magical when it's an aligned fit. It
that's right.
has to be an aligned fit. And so that's a space I said, we're focusing on alignment. We're focusing on helping our clients get and generate revenue from their appearances and letting them get their story out there in a bigger
Yeah,
way to
absolutely.
audiences that may not be interested in them in this area.
Hmm.
Maybe they're not
Hmm.
interested in longevity practices and all the biohacking stuff, but
Yeah,
they're interested in how does my kid's DNA and genes, how is that impacting their behavior because they're struggling in school and I'd like to
right.
have help with that. Like
Exactly.
that's an angle. Okay, and all that is just shifting the story.
Yeah.
And so that's where we get to play and have fun with looking at our clients' stories and the angles that we're getting them booked
Hmm.
on and pivoting one angle for one direction for one audience and then one angle for another direction for another
Beautiful.
audience so that way the message is still getting received
Right.
by everybody who needs to hear it.
And each person can truly be in alignment with what gifts and talents they have to bring to the world. Because we're all here for a reason, a very, very specific reasons, and there'll be multiple reasons. Just like the question I asked you earlier, in every decade of our lives, there's something that will be more pivotal and more profound that'll give us the
Mhm.
nudge to say, I got to follow this. And it's our responsibility to do that. But recognizing as we go further into adulthood, There's all these gems and crafts and talents and skills that we build and develop that we can then say, this is what I'm here to present to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's allowing your authentic version of you to be who you are today. And also those versions of who you have been to be true and right for who you were.
Right. Right. And then I can go into the whole energetic space, but we'll save that for next time.
Yes, for next time for sure.
I could talk to you for way longer, which
Same.
Perhaps there will be a next time. I'm hoping there will be.
That would be great.
We will see.
I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful, Kimberly, for you sharing all of your wisdom, but also your vulnerable pieces that make you you in all that you share for others, for their benefit and for their soul to be able to shine. So thank you for sharing your time, your energy, and your story with me. Thank you.
Thank you. I received that. Oh, you gave
Until
my
next
heart
time.
all the warm fuzzies.
This
Until
is
next
always
time.
you. Absolutely. Thanks so much. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.